Hello, this is Phil from the Design Philosophy newsletter. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to do this in a video format because this is a really visual concept and I thought it would make most sense to actually just show you rather than try and describe it all in words. The key takeaway that I want to leave you with from this video is that designs are much more than what you see in the final mock-up, which is what you're looking at here. When you're working in a team, when you're looking to actually build a design and release it to the public, release it to your users and your paying users, there's so much more that happens before and after that design process, which means that your life and your team's life is much easier. Behind this design is a set of components. For those of you familiar with Figma, you'll be familiar with components, and whilst what you're looking at here is a very nice, clean design, not perfect, but good, the actual components behind this are a bit of a mess. This was me throwing ideas together on a page. I didn't really prioritize making the design system behind this easy to understand, even for myself, let alone for someone else. And so it's really missing a lot of love. And what I want to show you today is how I would go about cleaning this up. What I want to end up with at the end of this, being honest, is a design which I can then build out in future. Maybe if I have another idea I want to try out and want to experiment with, and I kind of need these components to be much tidier in order to do that. This is where I think it makes sense to start. This image comes from a book called Atomic Design, written by Brad Frost several years ago, and it's a fantastic book. Would recommend you read it end to end, but this is the image that I think is going to be most useful for our purposes. What it shows you how to do is how to use the 5 layers that make up the atomic design process to break down a complex interface, in this example for Instagram. You might find this a really obvious concept, and when this book was written, it was actually very novel for companies to be approaching their design in this way. So what I'll do is I'll take you through it, and then we'll see how we can apply it to the design system that I have for Notion. So let's look at each one of these in turn. Starting with atoms. These are your smallest non-divisible components. So icons, you wouldn't break these down any further. Text containers for the timestamp, for body copy, as well as images like your profile picture, your user-generated content. Next, we have molecules. Now, this is where you start to combine those elements into slightly bigger assemblies. So in this case, we have the page header with your navigation, your title. Underneath that, you have your username with their profile picture and when they were last active, the content that they generated, etc., etc., etc. And you can see it's almost as if we are, as we go now to organisms, starting to combine this more and more into specific use cases. So whereas over here we didn't really know what our icons were being used for, over here when we're in organisms, it's clear that we're starting to build out an entire card which uses the heart and the comment icon in specific ways, that uses your body copy in specific ways, your tags in specific ways, and the actual tab bar, depending on your operating system. These are called different things, but these are also going to have now specific uses, as we're seeing here. And so by the time we get to templates, we're looking almost at the final screenshot almost that you could see of the interface. It's really when we get to pages where we start to add specific images, a specific username, profile picture, number of likes, specific copy, etc. So hopefully what you can see is that quite logically we're going from the most non-divisible components and combining them in different ways to get to the final high fidelity design that your developers can then go and build. So the next thing is for us to go and see how we apply this to our component library. For the purposes of today, what I'm going to do is just start to group these up into some pages, just to really start to help us get a handle on things. So let's actually have a look at our smallest non-divisible components. It's going to be quite obvious which ones on this page are our atoms, things like these icons and our traffic lights and this emoji icon over here. I'm going to group these up using some sections. So if we go and insert a section over here, let's call this one atoms, and we'll duplicate it across, call this one molecules, and we'll duplicate it across again, and call it organisms, and do that again, call it templates. We probably won't use all of these today, but let's just get them in there in any case. And we'll create one more and call this pages. And there we go. We have all 5 of our groupings. So let's just go in and start to move some of our components into those sections. So let's just start with these ones. I'm going to just take all of these icons, I'm going to pop them over here. Traffic lights as well, they're clearly going to go over here. Now you could argue that you could actually break up these ovals of traffic lights into separate components, but you would never really do that except for some very specific use cases of macOS where you just have a close button. But that's not something we're going to be dealing with here. I don't believe Notion even has that as an option, so let's leave it out. So now let's move on to molecules. And I think actually the window outline also counts because we wouldn't really break that down any more than it is already. So I think that's everything. Let's now look at our molecules. So basic navigation, clearly one because it's made up of subcomponents which are the 2 arrows and the hamburger menu. So that's very clearly a molecule. It's not really that different if you look at it in comparison to the atom. So it's not necessarily a massive difference between your atoms and molecules. It's purely that you're starting to combine components together into new components, and that's really where that breakdown starts to become helpful because I know that every one of these is subdivisible and possibly usable elsewhere. And we can do the same with the number of cards that we have here. So things like our page title, which is our leading icon and title, that can go in molecules. Things like these card titles and page links, those I'm going to say are molecules as well. And these pills as well, I'm going to say those are molecules. And yeah, I'm just throwing them on the page here, but we will get to tidying it up a little bit later. Okay, so where does that leave us with? If we just have a look at what's left, we have our window components, we have our basic window. So I think it's going to be more clear cut that our basic window is a template because it is using placeholder content. Right? This comes directly from the component itself. If I just go over to that, there you go. You can see that it's actually using placeholder content, as are the rest of these. I mean, I don't really think you have many pages called nice stuff. So I'm going to put that within templates. And now when it comes to this, I am going to pop that within organisms because it's at the level of detail where you wouldn't really add that much to it before you pop it within the window itself. It's not exactly an exact science, but it's helpful because now I can start to see how my component library is organized in approximate terms. I've got quite a few little atoms here, icons, quite a few combinations of those icons, and it's kind of clear to me that there's a possible set of deduplication and tidying up that we could do here, which is kind of foreshadowing what I'm thinking of doing a bit later. And then our organisms are a little bit sparse. We are kind of building a lot out from scratch. I mean, as you can see, all of these right-hand controls, they aren't even combined together. And so I have to build them all from atoms every time I want to use them. It's not ideal. So we can kind of see we have quite a lot of atoms and molecules, really very few organisms and templates. And I think I might need to do something about that to make it a much more quick to use design. So there are some ideas there. What we now have is a good idea of where the different parts of our design system fit into this framework, and we can now go in and start to explore how to bring in the next level of organization. So let's leave it there for now. What we'll do next time is we'll look at how we can use component variants in two specific ways. The first way is to start to make each of these icons easier to use when we're swapping them in and out for each other and we're making them inactive or inactive, so that we're not constantly having to copy and paste and move around little icons here and there. And we'll also look at how we can use versioning to make it easier to migrate from, in this case, this initial design for the pill UI component that I came up with, to this newer version over here. How can we do that in a way that can scale out when we're working with a bigger team who might be using different versions of those components as they build out different designs? So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know your thoughts. Please do get in touch. I will emphasize that this is not the one single right way of doing this. This is how I have approached this in the past, based on some common frameworks that you will find in the design industry. So I really hope it was helpful. Have a really good week, and we'll speak again soon.